Josina Anderson joins us right now on the hotline. She's had a ton to get off her chest. You've seen her everywhere. She's won Emmys, NABJ awarded journalist, senior NFL insider. Josina, when she puts out a tweet, people react, and so back by constant demand. Josina Anderson joins us on the hotline. How are you?
Well, good morning. First of all, that's quite the intro. I appreciate it. So thank you very much. You guys have had a lot going on in your city.
A little bit. A little bit,
Yeah.
Josina. First off, boy, I don't even know where to begin, Tone. Do you know anything about the reaction inside the building after Joe Flacco won on Thursday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, from the people, from my various conversations, I guess that's the best way to put it, I didn't hear any panic, and that's why I really wasn't surprised that, no change happened immediately or there wasn't a big emotional response. Obviously, I think that also has been mitigated by the fact that they won against the Dolphins, although that was another win team at the time. And so I have to say I wasn't surprised. I think that I'm trying to think back to, what was said to me, but I think one of the things is just like, everybody's putting their heads down, trying to get the job done, don't really get emotional over things like that. Obviously, I think to a certain degree, there's an argument to be made for trying to retrieve value for a quarterback that's older, you know what I mean? And how it was looking at the time in Cleveland. On the other hand, is the other argument for how it panned out after Joe Flacco left. And, that illuminating and surfacing questions as to why it didn't look like that when, he was in Cleveland, and it pointing back to some of the questions or things that, I'm raising on my own timeline or just via social media, which is, I just overall think that, there are fair questions to be asked about just the whole quarterback evaluation process from, the beginning to end. Now, clearly, just when it pertains to Shadeur, Cleveland is the team that actually drafted him. And so, you'll hear that from, people when you talk. It's like, why is this and that? We're the team that drafted him. Da-da-da-da-da. Yes, that is the case. But the other questions come up, relative to, the decisions that have been made since then and how the depth chart has unfolded since then, and what that pertains to and why, if that makes sense.
Now, let the record show, Josina, our guest, who we love to have come on and share her perspective, and she has her insider sources around the NFL and around sports in general. Josina mentioned Shadeur before we did in this segment. In fact, you mentioned him before Dillon Gabriel, the current starter. Are we not being fair in the city to Dillon Gabriel right now, the young starter and the Browns draft pick ahead of Shadeur Sanders?
Well, I would say beyond whether the question is if you guys are being fair, I think the process has been very fair to him relative to how Kevin Stefanski has rolled it out. When you think back to the preseason, the games that he played in, the opportunities he got, with the ones or what have you, the amount of snaps, the time, obviously he's starting now. So the process has been fair to a Dillon, and that's great. It should be. But when you ask me if you guys are being fair, I think that, and this is not to take away from Dillon. I don't make a habit of trying to, not be equitable, fair, disrespectful or what have you. So Dillon is a good quarterback from what I can see. I can see why Kevin Stefanski likes him. He's, completed passes. He can operate an offense at the NFL level. I think the question still goes back to exactly what I asked on my timeline, which is Dillon Gabriel the long-term solution for the Cleveland Browns? And when he's on the field over the long term, when you're in games that have adverse situations, challenging situations, you're playing teams that are more elite, is this the quarterback that is going to inspire that, motivation, that confidence, that, aura that, that you want from your quarterback, that kind of rises all boats? And I'm not sure that that's him. That doesn't mean he's not good. That doesn't mean he's not serviceable. That doesn't mean that he's not going to, have a career in the NFL. From what I have seen of Shadeur when he was playing, obviously at Colorado, we haven't seen him play regular season and, in the NFL. From what I have seen, he pertains another level of that factor that I'm talking about that I think would be helpful. But now what I'm concerned about is that even if he were to come in later in the season and at what point, after, kind of everything that has unfolded, what will that even look like for him? And will it be conducive for him while still acknowledging that it is his job? Obviously, that's what you pay for. You're still supposed to, kind of persevere over challenging circumstances. But I think we can still do that while acknowledging that there's more there that he would have to fight through mentally, just in order to have things manifest for him successfully on the field.
Josina Anderson joining us on the show. When do you think we will see Shadeur Sanders?
No idea.
I'm sorry.
No idea. Yeah, I'm just saying no idea.
Oh.
I think, because even somebody said to me in a conversation that, and, one of the conversations I was having, they said, in any way that it unfolds now, it's not necessarily great for Kevin Stefanski, right? I mean, so if he comes in and he plays well, then if it doesn't come in and the team is not doing well, just in one of the conversations I was having, there was an acknowledgement of it being kind of I don't know if the word is not a win-win situation, but kind of like a under a hard rock in any of those angles, right? So I don't know. I think that there is some acknowledgement of some of the things that I'm saying that I brought up, relative to how I'm breaking this down on your show. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's still under Kevin Stefanski's thumb for him to, manage the way he's managing it so far. So to answer your question, I don't know, because only Kevin Stefanski can tell you that. But I did say on my Twitter, and I'll say this again on your show, as I said it on my Twitter, I did not appreciate the characterization of his game as being street ball. I think that is completely unfair. I don't think that was right. If you want to say he improvises, which is good, a quarterback should improvise, because guess what? Plays break down after, the ball is snapped. But to characterize it as street ball, I think, is beyond unfair to Shadeur Sanders.
Josina Anderson with us right now. Well, to that terminology, the street ball thing, there's been a lot of what the Shadeur fans have described as coded language, that they feel like anytime somebody mentions, hey, there's a gap between him and Dillon Gabriel because Shadeur, the whiteboard stuff that leaked out, in the offseason, or things that have been leaked to national reporters that we assumed had to have been coming from the Browns about why he was fourth on the depth chart, then why he was third, that he couldn't possibly be ready to start a game, and it has nothing to do with athletic ability or arm. Well, that leads you to say brain, right? That goes right to the brain. Do you think it is been unfair language how we have talked about Shadeur Sanders in the lead up to whenever he eventually gets to get on the field?
I wouldn't use the word we, because I don't think it's everybody out there. I mean, there's, so I don't think it's like this big collective of people talking about Shadeur with dog whistles or coded language. I do think that there have been some things that have come out that are worthy of critique or checking, when they come out, just to be cognizant of how those things create a narrative that I do think is unfair, because just looking back at how he performed at Colorado, I mean, he was the quarterback on the other end of those passes to Travis Hunter and whoever else that, looked great, that, performed great under pressure with offensive lines that were breaking down, with scenarios that weren't always perfect, and keeping us calm and keeping us cool. I mean, and I'm not just saying that as a reporter who hasn't been there. I was at the, pro day. I've watched the games. I've interviewed him in person. So this also comes from those interactions and those observations as well. And so I wouldn't characterize it as a we thing. I just think that some people probably could be more careful, with the language that they're using to describe him, or, have nothing to say when, people point it out, and the fact that it might, just illuminate a little bit of whatever internal bias that they have. The tongue can sometimes, reveal those things when you're speaking. So, but I don't think he deserves that. And I do think that, relative to everything that has transpired, that and when I just see him interviewed in y'all's local locker rooms or whatever, I think that he's maintained a good spirit. Now, we could have a debate as to, whether certain interactions could come across more aware or refined for how it might hit to the masses or whatever. But even still, I don't hold that against, Shadeur is still early in his 20s. All rookies, all players still have a growth curve to have, especially in their interactions with the media. When I saw that whole thing with the mime and all this other thing, I think that Shadeur at his core is a kind of a go-lucky person. And I think that's how he thinks of things. Now, in reflection, looking back, relative to all of the steam that was around the situation, it was, maybe do something else just because of how it would be talked about. You could have that conversation, but I didn't see any malice in that. I didn't see any, like it was a direct target on Dillon or anything like that. It was just, you guys are talking about me, so now I'm not going to talk, and I'm just going to be funny about it. And it wasn't, to me, wasn't that big of a deal. But I will say, in reflection, just as far as the whole process leading up to the draft and, or what have you, are there some things that, in retrospect, that if he had to do the meetings again, would he do differently? Obviously, sure. I think there can be an acknowledgement of that. But I think Kevin has a bigger question and acknowledgement to ask himself. Is the results of his quarterback competition been the most beneficial to his team this season? And I don't believe that the game against the Dolphins is any, indication of that. You need to go against, a team that's giving a little bit more competition relative to how they're playing now, and have a larger sample size to make that decision.
Josina Anderson joining us from the Exhibit News Network. She's the senior NFL insider. Trade deadline, what's it look like for the Browns?
Oh, geez.
Could David Njoku be gone?
Well, let me say this, because, I was talking to League First this morning, and this is also their perspective, too, that I think that, the Browns should consider, and, could also be a topic for this, topic here, is that, what teams that really give up either they're good players or kind of have a flea market during the trade deadline truly benefit from it in a way where you can see it either that season or, the next, couple seasons after that. I was just talking to an executive this morning who was just, talking about, and their feelings. That's what bad teams do, so I don't know. Do I think it makes sense for the Browns to give up, the players that are at least the most potent for them now? Probably not. The idea, and I said this on my Twitter to a comment responding to someone who was saying something to me in my comments. I said, the idea is not to be in perpetual evaluation. At some point, it can't be just about getting this pick, getting this draft pick, and we have these draft picks. At some point, it has to be about winning in that season and doing better, because the goal obviously is to get in the postseason and to go deep into the postseason and make the Super Bowl. Now, you have done that in Kevin Stefanski's tenure, right? Although, some people that I've talked to will, make points about some of the other people that he had around him on his staff that were helping those times, that they were in the postseason. That's a whole nother conversation. And some of those people maybe not being there now, that's other people bringing that up. But the idea is to actually be potent and not just be like, oh, draft picks, and now, and now we're in another 3 years of, hope because we're waiting for these draft picks. I personally subscribe more to the less need philosophy of doing what you can to be winning right now every season. And I do think the fans in Cleveland deserve that.
At Josina Anderson on social media. She is from the Exhibit News Network. She is the senior NFL insider. Josina, thank you so much for your time. We hope to have you on again very soon.
Appreciate it. Have a good show.
Thank you. I almost said you as well. I thought she was going to say day. Josina, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Josina Anderson from the Exhibit News Network on with us, talking about the trades, obviously everything going on with Shadeur, Dillon Gabriel as well.